And joining us now is Dr. Francesco Cesareo, who is the chair of the National Review Board for Child Safety. Thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Maybe if you could, for somebody who doesn't know what the National Review Board is, just to give a brief synopsis.
Sure. The National Review Board was organized and created by the bishops in 2002 as part of the Charter for the Protection of Children and Young People. And it's really meant to be an advisory and consultative body to the bishops in how we can develop safe environments within our church for the protection of children and young people. So we recommend to the bishops best practices, policies that will affect safe environment, and also make sure that the charter is being implemented by the bishops.
Okay. And how is that progressed over the time that you've been involved too, and are people in dioceses coming along with the charter?
Yes, for the most part, all of the dioceses, with the exception of a handful, have participated in the audit process, which is the mechanism by which we determine if the charter is being implemented and how effective that implementation is. But we've seen an enormous sea change in the church since 2002 and 2012, where there have been new programs put in place, new policies, new procedures, all aimed to protect children and minors within the church. So that one could really conclude that at the present moment, the safest institution for children is in the Catholic Church because of all of the focus and emphasis that has been placed on education, on background checks, on monitoring, and things of that nature, which has really brought a greater attention to maintaining the child at the center of attention and making sure that he or she is safe.
And talk about that too. I know when you implement some of these initiatives, it can be for people to sort of fall back and say, okay, that's going on, and kind of forget about things. But in terms of trying to maintain it and keep people up to date on what they're doing and how important that is.
Right, that's very, very important, because the danger is that we become complacent as we see the effectiveness of these new initiatives. And so one of the ways that we prevent that is through the annual audit that dioceses undergo. They undergo an on-site audit every 3 years, but then they do a paper audit every year. And that's to make sure that the articles within the charter are being implemented. We do training for safety environment coordinators and victim assistance coordinators, both in terms of webinar training, but also there are conferences each year to try to bring them up to speed on new developments in the area, because they're all professionals. And then we constantly are referring to the bishops in terms of what are they doing and reminding them of their responsibility to carry out the charter.
And just on the diocese level too, or even in the parish level too, just for my parish too, we have the training that goes on as well, and how important that is to get it to the individual parishes and make sure they're maintaining that as well with the training.
Exactly, and that really comes from the diocesan level, where the safety environment coordinator for the diocese has that responsibility to make sure that the parishes are implementing whatever diocesan policies are in place and whatever program for safe environment the diocese has decided to implement within the parishes that make up that diocese.
What are some new things that the board is working on as you look forward to the future?
One of the things that we're working on is, now after 12 years of audits, we have a body of best practices or innovative practices in the implementation of the charter. So what we're beginning to do is to gather them together into a repository that we can share with dioceses if they have questions on how to best do a particular area of the charter. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. We're also beginning to lay the groundwork for a study on the effectiveness of safe environment programs to determine whether those programs are allowing people to retain the information over a long period, or whether it's necessary to continuously update that safety environment training that goes on. We're looking at better ways to do background checks and to make sure that background checks are done on a regular basis. We're also looking at how often diocesan review boards are meeting to make sure that they are meeting on a regular basis so that they can look at the policies of the diocese and make sure that those are up to date based on developments that have occurred and any revisions that take place to the charter.
And it seems like the USCCB has been very receptive. I know you're presenting to and keeping the bishops up to date on what's going on.
Yes, they've been very open to the suggestions of the National Review Board. We collaborate very effectively with the Committee for the Protection of Children and Young People, which is the Bishops' Committee. So we have a very good working relationship and a partnership because we're all aiming at the same goal, the protection of children and minors within the Church.
And I know in April, a Child Safety Month as well, and how important the Church is to be an example too, not just for the Church itself, but in society.
Exactly, because the Church can really be a model to other larger institutions on how to develop mechanisms that will allow for institutions to protect children, even though it might seem unwieldy at first, but there are ways in which a large institution can do that, and the Church can provide that information.
Personally, for yourself, what's it been like for you to be chair of the board and to meet with people and discuss all of it?
Well, I think for me personally, it's been an opportunity to assist the Church in restoring its moral credibility, and particularly to restore the faith and the trust that the laity have in the leadership of the Church. Because if we don't restore that trust, if we don't have a sense that the bishops are doing what they're doing, it's going to be very difficult for the bishops to maintain that moral credibility that was so eroded when this crisis came about. So for me, it's really an opportunity to assist the Church and assist the bishops in that restoration of trust and in making sure that our children is safe. Because as a parent, I want to make sure that if my children are involved in an activity in the parish, that they're going to be safe in that activity, and I think that's important.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Cesareo, for being with us.